Greetings, mighty companions, and welcome back to Transforming Relationships Through a Course in Miracles with the Quinns.
And Holy Spirit and all of our mighty companions
All here right now.
that are either joining us here live or checking in when you can.
That's right.
Whenever you do, it's going to be the perfect time and you'll be at the perfect place for where you need to hear what Holy Spirit, our comforter and our guide, has for us tonight.
Indeed, indeed. And before class, we did our random number generator prayer, and what it came up with in the Course in Miracles is chapter 30, section 7. And I'm not sure what that is in the blue covered edition.
Yeah, we forgot to.
So we sure did.
I could grab the book right.
That's okay. I can find it right here.
Okay.
I can find it right here very fast. So while I'm looking for this, then why don't you tell them what it is that we do on Tuesday evenings?
Well, Tuesday evenings, we call it Transforming Relationships Through A Course in Miracles. And the reason we've called it that for all this time now that we've been doing these classes, we've just recently switched to Tuesday, but the theme is still the same, and that is in our relationships, how can we apply what the Course is telling us? Because what we're going to hear even in this curriculum of reading this evening is that without our brothers and sisters, in other words, without our relationships, we can't discover the real world. You know, many of us were brought up to hear that one day there's going to be heaven on earth, that the old earth will pass away and there'll be a new earth. And we can experience that now, but we're going to do it through our relationships. And so be glad that we have our relationships, whether they be at work, whether they be in the household.
We have so many.
Whether they be with our next door neighbor, our brother, our sister, our uncles, our aunts, and grandparents, and children, whoever we're in relationship with. I love how Creator is bringing us all home together and doing it in a way that you can't come home by yourself, kid. You're going to have to take your brother, your sister's hand, and you're going to have to come home with them.
Especially the ones that you feel hurt by.
Right.
The ones that you have a grievance with.
In fact, those are the ones that are really.
Those are your special saviors. Those are your special saviors, your special appointed. Those are the ones that love has appointed as the one to help you learn the truth about yourself, that you can't be hurt.
Right.
But you don't see that about them at the moment.
No, we see something else
yet.
usually.
Not yet. So where we're at is Course in Miracles, chapter 30, section 6 in the blue book, and section 7 in the original edition. And the title in the blue book is The Justification for Forgiveness. And the title in the original edition is Forgiveness is Always Justified. That's quite the statement. Forgiveness is always justified.
Yeah.
Something we don't believe yet.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, we have lots.
That's why we still have.
We have lots of yes buts on that one.
That's why we still have unforgiveness problems. You know, problems that come from not forgiving those whom you think have done something unforgivable, right?
Right.
Whatever that is, you know. So I still have problems because I still think some of my grievances with others can't be forgiven.
Right.
I've decided that some of them can't be. I've decided that some grievances even God cannot answer. They're so big and they're so real.
Or some are so big, but I'm willing to forgive them, but it can never be forgotten what they did.
Right.
Because we all know what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was bad. It was stupid. It was wrong.
Right.
And
They should have known
that's
better.
That's the way we were taught in the world to do it, is to try to look past what they did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the Course is bringing us back to the beginning and going, let's come back to the chalkboard here. Come back to the chalkboard, and let's look how you found some guilt out there. You found what you've been seeking.
Yep.
And you projected it onto your brother and sisters from yourself, and thought you got rid of it. And let's come back to the chalkboard and talk about how all of this really works,
right,
and how you've been making real what was never real to begin with.
Right. And ask yourself the question when you come back to the chalkboard, did this person, what they did really have the power to change you from how God created you to be?
Right.
You know,
Or
was it
themselves.
really that bad and that powerful that they changed themselves or you from some powerful, loving, beautiful, radiant being God created to someone who's now a victim, someone who's now
Right.
vulnerable and weakened by what they did?
Right.
Did what you think they did really accomplish what you think it did?
Right.
You know, and you think about what you're upset with people about. It's like, well, I feel like they did something to hurt me, which means they made me weaker, or they made me less than, or they made me into something less lovable, or they damaged me. Right. And that's the basis of the grievance, that that they did something that has had power to change me from what God created me to be. That's the basis of the grievance. So, okay.
And as we would hear if we get to the latter part of our reading, is that, does it have the power to change them?
Right, exactly, for sure.
What God created them to be, and as God sees them to be.
Right.
And there's where we get stuck in a wrestling match with truth and our opinion. Is, well, yeah, it did change them. I mean, they're an
now
idiot
they're stupid
for having done that.
Now they're an idiot. Now they're guilty.
God created an idiot?
Right.
No, God didn't create an idiot. They just turned into one.
When they did that thing to me.
Yeah, you know that thing
that hurt
they
me.
did to me, that made me vulnerable. Or now I get triggered with anger every time it happens. Now
I have to go to therapy, and now every time I start a new relationship, I have to make sure that this new person doesn't do to me what that other person did to me.
Yeah, because you know what they did.
You know what they did. They hurt me. I used to be powerful and happy, and then what they did was so much more powerful than the way God created me to be.
It is kind of ironic that we would consider this notion that God, the perfect creator, God, the all-powerful creator, all-powerful.
Yep.
There's nothing more powerful than God. There's nothing more knowing. There's no more greater understanding or knowledge than God. And God is not limited in ability.
Right.
And of all of that, knowledge, wisdom, and abilities, God birthed forth a child, you and I, and made us so vulnerable, so unprotected, so we can get harmed,
so weakened,
so weak,
so weakened,
so needy,
so guilty,
so wanting, that's what God would have given? No. And that's the beauty of the real world, is once we start stepping out of the world that we create ourselves to be in, this dream fantasy land, then we can experience literally an experience of, hey, oh, wow, I'm not as nearly as vulnerable as I thought I was. and experiencing more and more of, God wants us to be joyful and happy, and God gave us the tools to be joyful and happy.
Yeah.
And
nothing that anybody has ever done to us in our perception has the power to change that.
Right.
Nothing. But all of our grievances are based on the delusion that somebody can do something to us, or somebody has done something to us that has changed us from how God created us to be: perfect,
Mm-hmm.
guiltless, loving, and lovable.
And for me, that's where the Course in Miracles title comes into play. When you have a grievance that you're just certain that other person made you vulnerable, or they had harmed you or hurt you, or did whatever negative thing that we put on them that they did, and you have that perception or that understanding transformed completely to the opposite direction, to where you're actually literally not pretending, but literally with pure gratitude thankful for that situation. Now you went
exactly from oh, like, you hurt me.
It's like the old prophets talked about, trading your ashes for joy.
Yes.
And our ashes are the way we perceived and saw the situation. And God's like, you haven't become vulnerable over that. That was, and God has the understanding for what that was.
Yes.
Even though we can't see
a blessing.
Yeah.
A gift.
That was a blessing.
So many times what we think, what we're feeling angry about was such a blessing in disguise that we couldn't see at the moment, and then later you go, man, if that person had not done blah 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 blah, I wouldn't be here with you right now.
Right.
I wouldn't be having the life I have right now. So did that person really hurt you, or was that person helping you and you just didn't recognize it?
Right.
But yet you wasted all this peace and abundance and joy on a grievance for something that was really a blessing, And so, we don't want to hold a grievance for something that never really happened. And what really never happened was that nothing they did really changed us. And what they did, whatever it was for our own best interest. It was helpful somehow.
Yeah.
Everything
is working out for good.
That's right. And that's why forgiveness is always justified.
Right.
Because when you realize that they didn't do what you thought they did, then you realize not only is my forgiveness justified, but actually gratitude is justified. And then that's when you're healed from the effects of holding that grievance. Because the only one who suffers from the effects of my grievance is me.
Well, right. Maybe we better get to reading, because
you're
looking so hot tonight. I'll start making out with you or something. Start reading.
Oh, honey. I mean, that would be great for our ratings, but Okay. All right. So the title is either The Justification for Forgiveness or Forgiveness is Always Justified. All right. Now we've got that right there. And let's go to comments. Okay. We don't have anybody in yet. All right. Well, it says, anger is never justified. Okay, first sentence, we already know we don't believe that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The title is...
The title we don't believe.
Forgiveness is always justified.
Yeah, we don't believe that.
So let's just start out and say, well, you know what? Anger is never justified. Forgiveness is always justified, but anger, not one single time.
That's right.
Can you believe that?
No, I don't.
Never.
But that's why I'm still suffering.
Never. Yeah. So
I
every
don't
time
believe
we're angry, we could say to ourselves, to help us get back on track
Mm-hmm.
until we get in our right mind
Yes.
is, when I get angry, I could say to myself, this is never justified.
Yes. And we could ask our higher self to help us to understand that.
Yeah.
Like, Spirit, show me that's true.
Yeah,
because I'm about to.
I'm feeling some anger.
Exactly. I do not believe right now that forgiveness is always justified. And so I'm tempted to hold a grievance, which is only going to poison me and my peace and my body.
Right.
So help me to see that anger is always justified right here, right now. So it says, anger is never justified. And here's another thing that we don't believe: attack has no foundation. If anger is never justified, then attack has no foundation. And understanding, accepting that anger is never justified and attack has no foundation, that is your escape from fear. That's where your escape from fear begins.
Mm.
And that's where your escape from fear will be made complete. When you accept anger is never justified and attack has no real foundation. Whew. Wow. Okay. And if I don't believe that, which I don't, as evidenced by my continuing suffering, then I need to ask for help. I need to ask my higher self to show me that my anger is not justified and attack has no foundation here before I go and attack, and hold some grievances and make myself more sick and broke and unhappy and alone because of my grievance. Now, when you accept that anger is never justified and attack has no foundation, here the real world, the world you say you want, will be given you in exchange for your dreams of terror, because it is on this idea that anger is never justified and attack has no foundation that forgiveness rests, and forgiveness is but natural. Now, you are not asked to offer pardon where attack is due and would be justified, because this would mean that you're forgiving a sin by overlooking what is really there. But that's not pardon, because you forgiving a sin that's really there, that would assume that by responding in a way which is not justified, like forgiveness, then your forgiveness will become the answer to attack which has been made. Thus is your forgiveness made inappropriate by being granted where it's not due. So
Yeah, the world's teaching is, if you're gonna forgive somebody, do it by overlooking what's not even really there, and because we're making it real by thinking that there's still something wrong there.
Right, and so that's the world's teaching is they did do something. Your anger is justified. Your attack does have a foundation, but you're going to give forgiveness anyway. That's the world's forgiveness. Okay.
Right.
But true forgiveness, the only kind of forgiveness that is your escape from fear, your forgiveness, your correct perception of their so-called sin, that's your release from fear. But true forgiveness doesn't go, well, you did something that does justify my anger and my attack, but I'm gonna overlook that, even though I know you did that.
Right.
That's worldly forgiveness.
And we heard here, and that's not real pardon.
That's not real pardon,
and
exactly.
We think it's, well, so I'm supposed to release that other person. I'm supposed to pardon that other person.
Exactly.
And where we've lost sight of what's really going on here is Spirit's trying to get me, Greg, to get me pardoned. And And I'm not wanting to
Oh.
pardon me because I'm not willing to pardon my brother and sister. I'm finding all evidences, all types of reason to keep them in chains, to keep them in bondage, to keep them in, well, you know what you did, but I'm like Anna said a bunch of times before, because I'm the greater of the two of us, I'm gonna forgive you.
What you did,
and
but I'm not gonna forget.
Yeah. And where the Course in Miracles curriculum way differs than the curriculum of most
spiritual religious systems.
Spiritual religious teachings and the likes, is that a lot of other teachings will come out and tell you well, love the sinner but not the sin. In other words, they're keeping the sin real.
Hating the sin.
Yeah,
forgive the sinner, but hate the sin. Love the sinner, but hate the sin. That's worldly forgiveness right there.
Because as we just heard here, that's not pardon.
That's not real forgiveness.
And it's not pardoning your brother and sister, pardoning yourself.
Right.
You're still not giving yourself pardon because you're still making sin real.
Exactly.
And what is sin but guilt? And what is guilt but perceiving it in the other as something wrong?
Yes, exactly. That can't be corrected, you know. So worldly sin, worldly forgiveness is not real forgiveness. It's fake forgiveness. Course in Miracles even calls it forgiveness to destroy. You know, where I acknowledge that you did sin. Okay. What you did really does justify my anger and attack, but
and before we forgive,
I'm gonna pretend.
Let's talk about it so that you understand
what you did,
so you don't do it again, and I don't have to forgive you all over again.
And let's confirm that you don't really deserve my forgiveness, and also my anger is justified. You know, so once we confirm that, then because I'm the more spiritual of the two, then I'll say, well, I'll overlook that, but I won't forget that. That's worldly forgiveness, which isn't really forgiveness. And that kind of forgiving of other people for what they did do to me that they don't deserve my forgiveness for, but I'm doing it anyway. That is a type of pseudo fake forgiveness that doesn't release me at all. Right. And remember, like you were saying, the goal here is not to forgive them, to release them from guilt. The goal here is for you to forgive yourself. And you need to be released.
Let's not forget that how did the ego belief system create its system? But only on laws of reality. And the laws of reality is as I give, I receive. Or you could say, as I give, I keep. And if I'm going to give guilt and condemnation to Anna and, make her a sinner, make her wrong.
Even though you think it's justified.
I don't realize what I'm literally doing. I'm playing right into the hands of the ego agenda, which is to make myself a sinner, make myself guilty, make myself condemned, because everything I give, I receive. I cannot escape that law. And that's why the ego belief system is always out on the prowl, looking for the wrong, because it needs to survive. It needs to keep the wrong going in me. And it can only keep it going in me going when I project it out and I give it. So I give guilt, I give condemnation, I give you're a sinner, you did something wrong. And now I don't realize that every one of those scoops, I just ate myself. I did it to myself. I did something wrong now. I did, and it keeps me in bondage.
That's right.
And the beauty is we have each other.
That's right.
the same principle can be reversed. I can use that same principle. I'm going to need the help and guiding assistance of a higher loving
You
self
sure are.
to do it initially for quite a while.
Yeah.
But it's not justified. It's not justified that I stay in bondage.
Yes.
That's not justified that
Right.
you stay in bondage. And so before I give that, I need to realize, oh, I'm doing it to myself again. I'm giving it to this is what I'm giving me. This is what I'm receiving.
Right.
And even though we sit there and grit our teeth and go, but they did do
but
that.
They did
that
do
thing
it.
They
I
did.
have witnesses. They
yeah,
did that.
Look at the text messages.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Like on this
look
one,
at the pictures.
Like on this short clip I see all the time, this guy comes up to couples and goes, how long have you been together? And we would say 7 years. And he goes, you guys pretty dedicated? And they're both like, yes.
Oh,
and
totally.
They're like kissing each other on the cheek. And goes, so there's no concerns. You mind if we test this relationship? And then he takes the phone and he has something that quickly test it to see any kind of it's an AI thing that looks like if they're doing any flirting app whatsoever,
any dating app, flirting app,
and
it
checks them all instantly.
Oh my god!
And you'd be amazed how many people where they go, "Is this you talking to this other person?" And when you
is this
see
a picture
that,
of your butt?
Yeah.
Who are you sending that to?
And when you see that, and then the person that, the other person that wasn't cheating,
right.
they're always, so hurt in the situation. But it's always, if they knew it, it's their release. Spirit's like, Spirit would probably be saying, I wanted you to know that so you could move on. That's why I brought this random stranger down the sidewalk and asked you if you want to test your relationship. Right.
So don't hold a grievance with that guy. Give him flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
we're always looking for the wrong and the negative about it. We're so programmed to look for how we're vulnerable.
How we've been hurt.
Yeah. And how vulnerable we are.
Yeah, exactly.
As God's children.
And our grievances keep that perception of being vulnerable going. It keeps it alive.
Right.
So when the Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness, it says you're not being asked to offer forgiveness where attack really is due and where attack really is justified, because that would mean that you're forgiving a sin by overlooking what is really there. So Course in Miracles version of forgiveness isn't I'm being asked to offer forgiveness where attack really is due and really is justified, right? In other words, we think forgiveness, the worldly forgiveness is I'm supposed to forgive their sin by overlooking what they really did. That's worldly forgiveness. And then it goes on to say, that's not real forgiveness.
Right.
That's not real pardon, because that's assuming that you're being asked to respond in a way that's not justified. Right. And so in this case, worldly forgiveness is your forgiveness isn't really appropriate. It's not really justified, but you're going to grant forgiveness where it's not really due. That's worldly forgiveness. I'm going to grant you forgiveness, even though you don't really deserve it, honey. Right? Right? You don't really deserve it. Right? So, but I'm going to grant you forgiveness because I am a Course in Miracles student, and obviously I'm the more enlightened of the two of us. That's not real forgiveness. And that kind of forgiveness does not release you. Okay. The Course in Miracles is telling us in the first paragraph that forgiveness is for you. When you forgive, it releases you, right? From feeling like you don't deserve release and forgiveness from what you think you did, right? So here in the first paragraph, we're hearing about worldly forgiveness, which isn't real forgiveness at all. It's really attack in the form of forgiveness, right? It's saying you know you did what you did and you don't deserve it, but I'll forgive you anyway. That of Course in Miracles says that's an attack. I know what you know what you did. I know what you did. We both know you don't deserve it, but I'll do it anyway. That's an attack, right? And it's certainly not releasing me at all from my guilt, from my mistakes.
And I'm just realizing that's what the whole foundation of the world's teachings are, is remember, is we were all born bad,
Sinners,
undeserving
of
and we
forgiveness.
all need what? To have what we did wrong overlooked.
Yeah.
That's the concept of the world's teachings, is we it starts out with guilty. And that guilt needs to be overlooked somehow, needs to be forgiven, and then we can move forward. Where the Course is saying, no, that's not how it works. That's not how you get released. That's the premise of the problem.
Right. That's the problem.
That's been the problem from day one.
That's
is just starting out on the wrong foot, which is guilt.
Yes.
And all it's doing is keeping you in guilt. It's keeping you in condemnation. It's keeping you in bondage.
And guilt means grievance. And so this is telling us, okay, so we'll just go on to paragraph 2. Okay. Yeah. All right. And I just want to say hi, Carolina, and hi, Demi. Love it. And Demi says, we're listening in yoga class. All right.
That's awesome.
All right. More power to you. I love yoga. Yoga is my therapy. Yeah. Right. Course in Miracles and yoga. That's my therapy. And hi, Carla. Carla says, hello, beautiful beings. Carla is obviously projecting her own beauty onto us. Can you believe that?
I can believe
Or maybe she's just correctly perceiving. Okay. Thank you, Carolina.
Thanks,
I am a good person. I am safe. That is true, Carolina. That is absolutely true. And we love you guys too. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for being here. Truly. It's awesome. Okay. So, and remember, I just want to say here, I just want to say that recognizing that anger is never justified and attack has no foundation, meaning forgiveness, that is our escape from fear. That's where our escape from our fears begins. When I go anger, to say true forgiveness goes, anger is never justified. My attack on this person has no foundation because they're not doing anything. They're not changing reality. They're not changing my reality, and they're not affecting my reality. They're not even affecting their reality. There's just nothing's happening. They haven't changed anything about me. I'm still as God created me. I'm still as love created me. That is where our release from our fears and anxieties and depressions and problems begins. So just want to go back to the first sentence in paragraph number 1 to remind us to increase our motivation to see what our ego tells us to hold a grievance for correctly.
All right.
Okay. All right. So great. Paragraph number 2. That's why forgiveness is always justified. This is why forgiveness always has a sure foundation. Now, you're not being asked to forgive what's really unforgivable. You're not being asked to overlook their real attack that does really call for punishment. And that's because healing and forgiveness does not lie in being asked to make unnatural responses, which are appropriate for what is real. So healing isn't asking you to forgive something that really happened and really can't be forgiven, but you're going to do it anyway. That is not real healing. That's not the kind of forgiveness that saves you from your fears and your anxieties and your depressions and your problems. That's not real forgiveness. Okay. Real forgiveness is not like you did what you did and my anger is really justified. My attack is really justified, but I'm going to not do that. Right. It says, instead, real forgiveness, your healing, by the way, merely asks that you respond appropriately to what is not real by not perceiving what has not occurred. That's where your real healing, your real release from your fears and anxieties and depressions really comes from. Okay. It's like, so, and then it says, if forgiveness of this person was unjustified, if what they did really made your forgiveness unjustified, then you would really be being asked to sacrifice your rights to attack and to be angry when you return forgiveness for attack. But the truth is that when it comes to the kind of forgiveness that releases you from your fears and your problems and your anxieties and your depressions and your sicknesses, says in real forgiveness that releases you, you are merely asked to see forgiveness as the natural reaction to distress which rests on error and thus calls for help. So, real forgiveness that heals you and releases you from your fears and your anxieties and your depressions and your problems, that is you seeing for your forgiveness of them as your natural reaction to their distress, which is resting on their error and which is really calling for help. That's real forgiveness that releases you, by the way, is you go, real forgiveness goes, real forgiveness is just a natural reaction to to another person's obvious distress, which is resting on their mistaken and their call for help. That's what real forgiveness is. It's a natural reaction to their distress that's based on their error, which means their call for help.
And also, I'm hearing here that as a natural reaction, it just says to distress.
Right.
What is the distress is when I'm perceiving that you're making an error. I'm the one now in distress.
Mm-hmm.
How many times where two people walk in a room and one of them's perceiving that the other's made an error, and the one that supposedly did the error is totally unaware
Mm-hmm.
of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that other person's, already condemning them and thinking that they did something wrong, and they're like, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
But the one in distress is the one that's giving out the condemnation. If I'm angry that I perceive you did something wrong, I'm the one in distress.
And they are too.
Right.
The person
they could be.
The person who I feel hurt by,
mm-hmm.
The truth is, it's not that they were sitting there plotting to hurt me. I mean, honestly, rarely, if ever, the person who I think hurt me is somebody who was in distress because they were in error about who they are in reality, and they were calling for love. I'm angry because I think they hurt me. But the truth is that they were distressed. They were calling for help. But when I see that they were distressed and calling for help, now I'm not like, you hurt me intentionally, right? So the basis of real forgiveness is that person wasn't trying to hurt me. That person was in distress, and that person was calling for help. And so my forgiveness is now just a natural reaction to what they did. I love it. Carolina says, none of it happened.
Exactly.
None of it didn't happen. Like my grievance and my hurt is like, they hurt me. Okay. And then forgiveness realizes that that's not what happened. They didn't hurt you. They were in distress. They were calling for help.
And I perceived the situation wrong.
And so I'm in distress. Now
Right.
I'm calling for help. That's what's really going
That's
on.
what's really going on.
Yeah,
Is my perception is out of whack.
exactly. They were in distress and calling for help, and so am I. That's what's really going on. And Carolina says, when we hold on to grievances, we imprison ourselves.
Exactly.
And hi, Mary. Lovely to see you, dear. All right. Okay. So true forgiveness is just a natural reaction to distress, which rests on error. They are just distressed. They're in error about who and what they are, and they're calling for help. And so my forgiveness is just a natural reaction. That's correct. That's real forgiveness. In other words, that in that regard, forgiveness is the only sane response. When someone's in distress because they've been in error and they're calling for help, then your forgiveness is the only sane response. If somebody's in distress and calling for help, then forgiveness is the only sane response. Okay? But if you see that no, they're not just in distress and calling for help, then you won't see forgiveness as the only sane response, right? And seeing, forgiving them, realizing that they were in distress because they were in error and they're calling for help, and forgiving them as your response to that, that is the only thing that keeps your rights from being sacrificed. Seeing what they did as an error from based on their distress, they're calling for help. That is the only kind of forgiveness that keeps your rights from being sacrificed. And what are your rights? To have your error seen as a call for love also. That's my right. But I will not believe I have that right to have my error seen as just a call for love and worthy of forgiveness if I don't see that in another person. If I don't see their right to be forgiven because they were just calling for love, then I won't believe that I have the right to have my errors forgiven and being seen as just a call for love where I was distressed. I made an error because I was distressed. I made an error when I was distressed. And so I want to see that my error that I made when I was distressed deserves forgiveness. I want that right, for myself, but that means I won't have to give it. All right. Carolina says, yes. Okay. And then Carolina also says, they have the right to be seen as they are, and so do I. Exactly. So I have the right to have the errors that I have made, that I made based on my distress. I deserve to have those errors be forgiven. But I won't know that until when other people have made errors because they were in distress, because they're calling for love, that they deserve forgiveness for that error that they made in distress. But so real forgiveness is that. Real forgiveness is this person was in distress, so they made an error. They were calling for help. And they weren't doing it intentionally because they're evil and they deserve forgiveness. That perception, that correct perception, enables my rights to forgiveness of my errors is preserved. All right. Okay. And then Carolina says, real forgiveness is realizing you are me. That's right. And that we're the same. I'm making errors out of my distress. I'm calling for help that way and making errors, and so are they. All right, paragraph 3. This understanding is the only change that lets the real world rise to take the place of dreams of terror. Fear cannot arise unless attack is justified. And if attack had a real foundation, pardon could have no foundation. If attack has a real foundation, then forgiveness can have no foundation.
So they would have to, their error, supposedly, that we're calling an error, would have to be real for it to have a foundation. Fear can't arise unless attack is justified, and if attack had a real foundation, pardon would have none. And if they hadn't done anything wrong, then there's no foundation that what they done is standing on for me to attack. My attack has no justification. It would be justified if they had done something wrong.
Exactly. And by my understanding that, that is the only change that lets the real world rise to take the place of dreams of terror in my mind. Wow. So when I understand that they haven't done anything that even deserves pardon because they were just calling for love, then that is what enables the real world to rise in my mind to take the place of dreams of terror in my mind. Wow. So seeing forgiveness as justified is what allows the real world to rise in my mind and take the place of dreams of terror in my mind. Only when I see forgiveness of them as justified, because they were just calling for love, because they were making an error, and so they were in distress. Okay. It says, fear cannot arise unless attack is justified. It's a rhyme. Fear cannot arise unless attack is justified. Fear cannot arise unless attack had a real foundation. And if attack has a real foundation, then guess what? Pardon, forgiveness can have no real foundation. Wow. Now, says, the real world is achieved when you perceive the basis of forgiveness is quite real, which means fully justified. Whoo-wee. So my grievance that is telling me that my forgiveness is not justified for this person is keeping the real world from me. Wow.
The reason you can't see all comments, Mary, is because some comments are coming in on YouTube and some on Facebook. You're on Facebook.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
So some of the comments we read are from a different live feed that's going on.
Thank you. I thank you for, I did not know that's why, because Mary was telling me that, and I was like, I don't know why that's happening. So I'm so glad that you understood.
You can see, like, she's F for Facebook,
yes,
and you can see
exactly.
like Carolina's on YouTube.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that explanation. Mary and I were talking about that earlier, and I was like, I don't know why you can't see any of the other comments. So thank you. All right. I was about to have a grievance with StreamYard because Mary couldn't see everybody's comments.
Yeah, that's like, for example, Mary, if the thought had come into your mind that, well, people must be blocking me for some reason so that I can't see their comments, whatever that might be, that's, if that was perhaps anything that might have been going on. But, you know, I could see something like that, because that's what our ego belief system's always doing, is we're trained to look for errors in the others. Why? Because we're trying to keep them real in ourselves. I want to keep these errors real in me. So to do that, I have to perceive them in another.
As real, which means unforgivable.
And which also means now attack is justified.
That's right. Anger and attack is justified.
And what's attack? Now it's justified. I give you some guilt, maybe a little dab of condemnation, maybe a little twerking of some, correction.
That's some serious twerking. Yes. Anger is justified. My attack has a real foundation. Yeah. And now, like you said, now you deserve to be corrected by me.
but the point is, something's wrong. Something's out of place.
Right.
Something needs to be changed. Something needs to be fixed.
Yep.
And whereas that's where the error is.
That's right.
Is I'm coming up with this nonsense. I'm looking for it. I'm always seemingly finding it. And then I attach those chains and shackles on the other person, or just not realizing that I'm just tightening up the shackles on myself.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And so, and remember, the real world, the loving, abundant world where you feel free and you feel appreciated and you're doing what you love and you feel free and you feel loved and you feel supported and you feel sustained by love and you feel free and supported to do who you are. The real world is achieved when you perceive the basis of forgiveness is quite real, which means fully justified. You don't experience the real world where you feel free and supported and free to be yourself until you see the basis of forgiveness as fully justified. Wow.
I love it. Carolina says, let that person be free.
Amen.
Freeing them, it frees you.
Seeing them as worthy of forgiveness, because whatever they did was an error that they made based on their distress when they were calling for help. That's forgiveness.
And the Course is always telling us that we don't believe that we deserve
release. Forgiveness for our errors, our mistakes.
We don't believe that we deserve it. And the proof of it is because we're not giving it in others. Exactly. And until we fully give it in others, which we'll hear later, there's no order of difficulty.
That's right.
In that.
There's nothing that can't be forgiven.
As I jokingly say lately, to all the Bidens and the Trumps, it doesn't matter
exactly
who we've been holding the grievances
with. It's unforgivable.
It's like look over at that person who we've been struggling with,
who we believe can't be forgiven,
and say to myself, is release justified for me? Because I'm using that person like a little 2-bit guilt imprisonment whore to keep me enchained and bondage.
Yep.
Why am I doing that to myself? I think it's so fun to keep putting
I'm so right.
The chains and shackles on these other people.
Exactly.
Not just the one political person. I have a whole arena.
A whole list, honey.
Got a whole circus of these people. and our spiritual loving guide is going, I think you deserve some release and freedom.
Yes, exactly.
But
I would love for you to see that your errors deserve forgiveness. And so you're going to need to see that their errors that they made based on distress are worthy of forgiveness. So, and you can only experience the real world if you if you
some lemon.
I know there's the ego going, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to choke you to death on live TV. Yeah. Ego does not want us to say these words. Luckily, the algorithms do not really understand A Course in Miracles, so we can say anything. Teaching A Course in Miracles and the algorithms don't really respond. They don't really know what we're saying. Thank you, God. It's so beautiful. All right. So it says forgiveness is the only sane response. You know why? Because forgiveness is the only response that keeps your rights to forgiveness of your errors from being sacrificed. Wow.
Your rights, which are the right to be innocent,
To be forgiven for
the
your
right
errors.
to be free.
Yeah, exactly. To not be like held down and persecuted and punished for your errors. That's your right. You deserve correction for your errors that is loving. That is not a punishment. You deserve to have your errors corrected without punishment. Without punishment. That's what you deserve. You deserve to have all your errors that you made based on distress when you were calling for love. You deserve to have all those errors corrected lovingly. That's your right as a child of God. But you will never know that and experience that until that's the way you see the other people's errors that they made when they were in distress and calling for help. That's your right. But you won't know you have that right until you offer that right to others. All right. Beautiful. Carolina says, I am eternally innocent. Yes, you are. That's a correct perception. You are eternally deserving of only loving correction for whatever errors you made when you were distressed. Because that's what I want. Truly, I've made so many errors when I was distressed. Truly, when I was distressed, when I was feeling afraid, when I was feeling guilty, when I was feeling ashamed, when I was feeling unworthy, I made so many errors. Meaning I did so many unloving things. So many. Just ask all my past relationships. They'll tell you she did so many unloving things. That's right, I did so many unloving things when I was distressed, when I was calling for love. And I do want to perceive that I deserve forgiveness and loving correction for those, meaning not punishment. All right. Now, it says, so the real world, the loving world, abundant, safe world is achieved when you perceive the basis of forgiveness is quite real, which means fully justified. Because while you regard forgiveness of the others as a gift they don't really deserve, then your forgiveness must uphold the guilt that you would so-called forgive. Wow. If you regard your forgiveness as a gift unwarranted and unjustified, then the so-called forgiveness you're giving them is really going to uphold the guilt that you're trying to forgive.
I think I'm lost. Where
Okay. I'm in paragraph 3, sentence 4.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
While you regard your forgiveness of them as a gift they don't really deserve, unwarranted, then the so-called forgiveness you give them must uphold the guilt that you're so-called forgiving. In other words, what that really means is unjustified forgiveness that you're giving. I'm giving you forgiveness, but it's not unjustified. Unjustified forgiveness really is attack. If you're giving them forgiveness that you don't believe they really justify, then you're really attacking them. Isn't that a deep concept? If you're forgiving them for something you don't really feel justifies your forgiveness, you're really attacking them. Wow. And unjustified forgiveness is all the world can ever give. That's all the world ever gives. I'm going to give you forgiveness even though you don't justify it, even though it's not justified. I'm going to forgive you because I'm a good Christian. I'm a good Jew. I'm a good Muslim. I'm a good whatever. That kind of unjustified forgiveness, that's really an attack. That's not real forgiveness. I'm going to forgive you even though you don't deserve it, honey. That's really an attack. It says the worldly forgiveness, meaning fake forgiveness, pardons so-called sinners sometimes, but worldly forgiveness remains aware that those people have sinned and that they don't really deserve the forgiveness that you're giving. That's worldly forgiveness. That's how the world forgives. That's religious, worldly forgiveness. I'm going to give you forgiveness because I'm the better of the two, but you know, and I know you don't really deserve it. That's unjustified forgiveness. It says that's not real forgiveness. That's worldly forgiveness, which isn't real forgiveness, which is really an attack. And in other words, that's false forgiveness. False forgiveness is what the world employs. Why? To keep the sense of sin alive. So the world does fake, false forgiveness. Why? Not to forgive and correct errors based on distress, but to keep the sense of sin alive. So the world is like, oh, I'm forgiving. I'm such a good person. I'm so holy. I'm forgiving. I'm forgiving. But really, no, you're not really forgiving. You're keeping the sense of guilt alive. That's worldly forgiveness, which is fake forgiveness, which doesn't release you from the suffering that you are experiencing because you don't believe you deserve a loving correction for your errors that you made when you were distressed. All right. I love it. So Carolina says, Abrahamic beliefs are an attack on God. Well, just tell it like it is, Carolina. And she says, someone's coming to save me. LOL. I think that's what he's trying to say. All right. Okay. So everybody take a breath. Talking about real forgiveness versus fake forgiveness. We're talking about your real release versus your fake release. Okay. Now it says paragraph 4. This is the false forgiveness which the world employs to keep the sense of sin alive. And recognizing that God is fair, it seems impossible that God's pardon could be real. Thus is the fear of God the sure result of seeing forgiveness as unmerited. If you don't see forgiveness of them as merited, then you are going to be afraid of God for yourself. Right? If they don't deserve forgiveness, what does that mean? You don't deserve forgiveness. And if you don't deserve forgiveness, what does that mean? That means God doesn't love you. That means you need to fear God because God sees you as unforgivable.
Well, because you see God as the world sees how things work. We see God as God looks past our sin. In other words, keeping our sin real and pardons us.
Yes.
Rather than looking at us as perfect and innocent.
Needing no forgiveness.
Which is not keeping the sin real.
Thank you.
And so it still makes us in fear of God because, well, he still remembers what I did. He still knows what I did. That I'm an idiot. That I did you know what. And so it makes us fearful.
Of God. It makes us fear God. Recognizing that God is fair, me seeing that my forgiveness of them isn't justified, now it seems impossible that God's forgiveness of me could be real because God is fair. So if I don't see forgiveness of them as justified, then it's only fair that God doesn't see my errors as worthy of being forgiven.
And Carolina says, we are whole and holy and beautifully free. And that's true
Mm-hmm.
because we have made those around us whole, not lacking, not needing to change, and whole and beautifully free.
Exactly.
That's why I'm free, because I made you free.
Exactly. And then it says, and so by seeing that other people don't really deserve my forgiveness that I'm gonna give them because I'm the better of the two, thus is the fear of God the sure result of seeing forgiveness of them unmerited. If forgiveness of them isn't merited, then God's forgiveness of me, of my errors that I made when I was in distress, is unmerited. And that's because no one who sees themselves as guilty can avoid the fear of God. Whew. If you see yourself as guilty, you can't avoid the fear of God. And you see yourself as guilty when you see other people as guilty for their errors. Do you see other people as guilty for their errors, deserving of punishment for their errors? Or do you see them as deserving of forgiveness? Well, if you see them as guilty for their errors and not deserving of punishment, then you can't help but see yourself as guilty for your errors and not deserving of forgiveness. But you are saved from this dilemma if you can forgive. You are saved from this dilemma of not feeling like you are worthy of forgiveness for your errors if you can forgive, which means see other people as deserving punishment for the errors that they made when they were distressed and in error. I love it. You are saved from this dilemma if you can forgive. The mind must think of its creator as it looks upon itself. So however I see myself is how I'm going to see my creator. If I see myself as undeserving of forgiveness, then I'm going to see my creator as unforgiving. Anybody here ever see their creator as unforgiving? Anybody ever see yourself as unworthy of forgiveness?
Or doing something wrong.
Yeah.
If you think that you do something wrong,
yes,
you're going to think of your creator as doing something wrong.
Exactly.
Our creator is exactly what what we believe ourselves to be.
Exactly.
And at the current time, we don't know our creator because we don't know ourselves.
Exactly. And if I think I'm guilty for my errors because I think other people are guilty for their errors, then guess what? I'm going to think of God as unforgiving. I'm going to see God as unforgiving if I see myself as unforgivable. And I see myself as unforgivable because I see other people as unforgivable for their errors. But if you can see other people as deserving of forgiveness for their errors they made when they were in distress, then guess what? You have learned that forgiveness for your errors that you made when you were distressed is your right as much as their right. What's so funny, honey?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Even though you're laughing. All right, I guess that's a private joke. All right. Well, Mary says, you guys are so amazingly helpful.
Thank you, Mary.
That's what Mary said. Thank you, Mary. Mary must see.
For those of you on YouTube that can't see Mary's comment.
Mary said, you guys are so amazingly helpful. Very good. And Carolina says, let's go.
That's right. That's what I was laughing
She
about
sounds like
earlier.
us. Let's go. Let's
That's
do
what
it.
I was laughing about.
Yeah, oh, that's what you were laughing about. Okay, let's go.
That's
But it
something
sounds like
that's
let's
something I would
go.
say.
That's you and I said that all the time. Let's go. Are you ready to go? Let's go. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
No, it's like, let's go.
Yeah.
It's like, when you have a touchdown in the end zone, you
Yes,
celebrate.
exactly.
Let's go.
Exactly.
This is deep revelation
That's
stuff.
right. Exactly.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's forgive. Let's forgive. Come on. Team forgiveness. Right. And what does forgiveness mean? It means I recognize that you made an error based on your distress, just like me, and I deserve loving correction for the errors I make when I'm in distress. So do you. Okay. That's what forgiveness really means. Not even though you did something that's really unforgivable, that really does justify my attacking of you, I'm going to forgive you because I'm the better of the two. That's worldly forgiveness. That is forgiveness that does not release you at all and actually makes you feel like you don't deserve the forgiveness for your errors. All right. Now, then it says we're still in paragraph 4. It says, nor will you think that God intends for you a fearful judgment which your brother does not merit. If they don't merit a fearful judgment, then guess what? Neither do you. Because it is the truth that you can deserve neither more nor less than they do. What do they deserve? Well, what does it say? It says it's the truth that you can deserve neither more nor less than you think they do. You can deserve in your mind neither less nor more than what you think they deserve. So what do you think they deserve? What do you think they deserve? Do you think they deserve forgiveness? Or do you think they deserve attack and your anger, even though you're not going to give them that because you're the better of the two? What do you think they really deserve? That's the question, because you cannot deserve either more nor less than what you think they really deserve. That's deep. What do you think this person deserves for the error they made when they were distressed and calling for love? Well, whatever it is you think they deserve, you don't deserve either more nor less. Something to remember. And this is how you learn that you must. Oh, sorry. I skipped. Okay, now we're in paragraph 5. Fear is a joke. Ha ha ha. Very good. Carolina says, let's forgive. Let's forgive because we are one. Fear is a joke. Fear is nothing. Exactly. And so are the errors that you think that justify your anger at others. And same with yours. All right. You guys ready to go to paragraph 5?
Yes, let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go to paragraph 5. That's the question. Am I ready? All right. I'm ready. Okay. Paragraph 5. Forgiveness recognized as merited will heal you. That's because forgiveness recognized as deserved gives the miracle its strength to overlook your errors. And this is how you learn that you must be forgiven too. As you recognize that forgiveness is deserved for them, then this is how you learn that you deserve forgiveness as well. There can be no appearance or grievance or error that cannot be overlooked. There cannot be any grievance, any error that cannot be forgiven. Because if there was some error that could not be forgiven, then it would be necessary first that there be some sin which stands beyond forgiveness. And if there was some sin that stands beyond forgiveness, then there would be an error that is more than a mistake, which means there would be an error that is a special form of error which remains unchangeable, eternal, and beyond correction or escape. If there is some error that cannot be forgiven. If there is some error that cannot be forgiven, then there would be one mistake which had the power to undo creation, which means to make a world which could replace creation and destroy the will of God. If there is one error that cannot be forgiven. If there is one error that cannot be forgiven, if this were possible, then there could be some error, some appearance, which could withstand the miracle, which means not be healed by it.
Man, I'm going to sneeze on that one.
You go like, I sneeze at that one.
That lemon is, I did that, I think, the last class we had. I put...
too much lemon?
No, I put cinnamon.
Oh, cinnamon.
This one I put a big glass of lemon in the sparkling water.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But it is true.
The good thing is I didn't make an error.
That can't be forgiven. That's right. That's the good news. That's the truth of the matter. That is the truth of the matter. All right. Whew. Wow. Okay. You guys are cooking with grease. Mary says, you both are full of joy and humor. I love it.
Thank you, Mary.
Right. Thank you. We're trying to see the humor in our grievances. We're trying to see how our grievances are a big joke that we forgot to laugh at, that we're playing on ourselves. All right. And then Carolina says, I don't wish to error. All right. Joy and humor. Amen. We got to laugh at. Remember how we got into this mess. Remember how we got into this mess is that a tiny mad idea, tiny insane idea crossed our mind that we forgot to laugh at.
That the child of God was guilty.
Yes, exactly. That there could be some error that love could not correct. Okay, that was the tiny mad idea that we forgot to laugh at. That then became a serious idea. Okay. Now we're on paragraph 6. Man, we're cooking with grease. How are we doing on time? Okay, great. Got about 15 more minutes. Paragraph 6 says, there is no surer proof that idolatry is what you wish than a belief that there are some forms of sickness or grievances or problems that forgiveness cannot cure. I'm going to say that again because that's so good. There's no surer proof that idolatry is what you wish than a belief that there are some grievances, some forms of sickness and joylessness that forgiveness cannot cure. Wow. My belief that there's some forms of sickness that forgiveness cannot cure is my belief. Is my idolatry. That's what idolatry is. My belief, what I worship, the idols I worship, is my belief that there's some form of grievances or sickness that forgiveness cannot cure. Wow. That's my idolatry. That's my wishful thinking. My wishful thinking, my idolatry, is that there's some form of grievances, some form of hurt, some form of problem that cannot be cured by forgiveness. Whew. Now, And my belief, my idolatry, that there's some forms of sickness and joylessness that forgiveness cannot cure means that I prefer to keep some idols, some sicknesses, which means I'm not prepared as yet to let all idols and all wishful thinking and all sickness go. And thus we think that some grievances are real and not appearances at all. Do not be deceived about the meaning of a fixed belief that some appearances, some grievances are harder to look past than others. I'll say it again. Don't be deceived about the meaning of your fixed belief that some grievances are harder to look past than others. Your belief that some grievances are harder to forgive and look past than others always means that you think that forgiveness must be limited, which means you have set a goal of partial forgiveness and a limited escape from guilt for yourself. That's what that means when you think that there's some grievances that cannot be cured by forgiveness. Wow. And what can that mean except what can that be except a false forgiveness of yourself and a false forgiveness of everyone who seems apart from you? Whew.
Yeah, like Carolina said earlier,
Exactly.
we're all one. We're all the same.
And like Carolina also says, all of our grievances are the same, and forgiveness is total. Exactly. My belief that there are some grievances, some problems, and some sicknesses that cannot be cured by forgiveness, that is just my desire to keep. That is my desire that I only have a limited escape from my own guilt, from my own errors, from my own escapes. I'm wishing for only a limited partial escape from my own errors. I only want a partial limited forgiveness from my own errors, is why I believe that there are some grievances that cannot be forgiven. And that's why I believe that there are some sicknesses that cannot be cured by forgiveness. Because I believe I deserve only a limited forgiveness, a limited escape from sickness and problems. Wow. All right. So I'll take a breath. I know. Demi says, wow, that some idolatry has wasted much time in my life. Let's go. And let's go. Thank you. Greg and I say that all the time. Let's go. Let's go. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is the key. Forgiveness is the way. Forgiveness is the only cure for your own errors, your own problems, your own sickness that you made when you were distressed, when you were calling for love, calling for help. Forgiveness. And what is forgiveness? It's not, well, I forgive you for what you really did, even though you don't deserve it. Forgiveness is you made an error that can always be cured by forgiveness. You've made an error that can be corrected by love. That's what forgiveness means. And you deserve correction by love for your errors. What you did was an error, just an error that can be corrected by love. That's forgiveness. And that's the only thing that enables you to accept that you deserve loving forgiveness for your errors. All right. Okay. So that was paragraph. Now we're on paragraph 7. We're on time.
One to go.
Yes, we got. This is our last paragraph. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Let's go. Let's go, Greg. Come on. All right, paragraph 7, last paragraph. It must be true that the miracle can heal all forms of sicknesses, all grievances, or the miracle cannot heal anything at all. Well, either the truth can heal all errors, all sicknesses, or the miracle, the truth cannot heal any errors or any sicknesses. The miracle's purpose cannot be to judge which forms of sickness are real and which sicknesses are true. If one sickness must remain apart from healing, then one sickness, one problem must be part of truth. If there's one sickness, if there's one grievance that cannot be cured, that cannot be forgiven, then there's one sickness and there's one grievance that must be part of truth. And if there's one grievance, if there's one sickness that cannot be forgiven, that cannot be cured by truth, then you could not escape all guilt, but only some of it. You must forgive others entirely, or you're going to keep an image of yourself that's not true. And you're going to remain afraid to look within and find escape from every lie, every sickness, every problem there. Release and escape from every problem rests on faith that there cannot be some forms of guilt which you cannot forgive. I'm going to say that again. Really escape from every problem cannot be. Escape from every problem rests on faith that there cannot be some forms of sickness, some grievances which you cannot forgive, which means there cannot be appearances which have replaced the truth about you. Wow.
And what is that truth?
And that truth is, I thank you, God, for your perfect children, and in their guiltlessness will I see my own. Is that the truth that you were asking about?
Yeah, that got to it.
Yeah.
That God's child in sentence 5 of 8, God's child is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Or this, I love this sentence so much when we're reading it before the class. God's child is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And why is God's child perfect? Because if God's child wasn't perfect, then God's child couldn't be God's child, because God is perfect.
That's right.
And what it said earlier is the way we see ourselves is the way we see God. If we see God this way, if we see ourselves this way, or another this way, then we see God that way.
That's right.
And God's child is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Or God's child couldn't be God's child.
That's right.
Nor will you know if you think that God's child merits escape from
does
guilt
not
in all
merit
forms
escape
and all of its consequences.
Mm-hmm.
If I think that Anna's perfect, if I remember that, then I would know that she merits all escape from any problems.
Yeah, guilt in all its forms and all its consequences.
Because she's perfect.
Yeah. And so there is no way to think of other people except this way if you want to know the truth about yourself. And what way is that? There's no way to think of others but this if you want to know the truth about yourself. And it's this. I thank you, Father, for your perfect child, your perfect creation. And in their perfection, in their guiltlessness, will I see my own.
You can see that's where our roadblock is. Until we can see the perfection in another, we will not, we'll have a roadblock in front of our eyes, our perception, our understanding to be able to see ourselves as perfect.
Exactly. Until we see them as guiltless, until we see them as meriting the escape from their guilt and all the consequences of their guilt, then we'll never see that we deserve escape from our guilt and all the consequences of our guilt, which is just our errors that we made based on our distress. There you go.
All right.
All right, you guys.
Unfortunately, we're out of time for you readaholics like us. But there's always another time.
That's right. There's always next Tuesday.
And there's always, I thought 7 was the end, but I forgot it actually goes to 9. But as we always encourage you, take a few moments after you turn this broadcast off and just read on to the end of that section.
And accept what it's saying to you about what you deserve. Thank you guys for joining this healing circle. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for, if you're watching this on Facebook, sharing this on your live feed so that we can join on these ideas and strengthen these ideas and as we send them out into the world. This is what the world needs. And you are the light of the world. And thank you for being the light of the world. We appreciate you guys. And we will see you next time we see you.
Love you guys.